Hello everyone, this is Joe Bullis, and if you're receiving a link to this video, then you are on my roster for MELS 605 add-on for summer of 2022. And depending on your current course instructor for 603 add-on, you may already be receiving information and guidance on the upcoming summer semester. As you may know, the summer semester is a really quick semester because we're looking at 10 weeks versus 15 weeks long. So we really want to make sure that you get a good start and move forward with meeting all the requirements of the MELS 605 add-on so we can get you in good shape to graduate. So in order to do that, I wanted to send out a preliminary video on just with some overview on the two evidences that you'll be working on during that time, which will be the CAAP, the CAAP, and the Psyop, the SIAP. As I said earlier, depending on your course instructor, you may already have received information on the CAAP and the Psyop, and actually may have already been working on them. But if you haven't, then I wanted to give a video on what those two evidences are. Kind of get you started on those two evidences as you wrap up the spring semester 2022 and heading into the summer semester 2022. You can go ahead and get a head start if you haven't already on those two evidences. There are several pieces of resource available to you for the CAAP and the Psyop. Right now, I am sharing my screen and I am sharing the MELS Scale Handbook. If any of you have had me in the past as a clinical coach, you know that I rely heavy on the Scale Handbook in kind of giving information and providing resources to you as we go through the MELS program. Go by the rubric in the Scale Handbook when I'm looking and giving feedback on any of the tasks that's given to me in my Blackboard shell. So that's the main source for me, the main document that I look at. However, I am going to share my Blackboard internship shell. Let me bring that up now. So if, there we go. So you will be looking right now, or should be looking right now at my MELS clinical internship shell. You will have access to this if you don't already by the time you watch this video. But this is where you will be submitting your task to me for review. And feedback and also grading as your clinical coach. Please note that I'd use the shell. There's several shells that may be open to you that you have access to, but I use the one that is entitled MELS Clinical Internship _Bullis. So make sure that that you have access and that you are accessing that shell. If you don't have access to this shell by the time you see this video, give it maybe a few days into the summer semester. But if you don't have it by the end of the first week of the summer semester, please let me know and we'll get you, make sure that you have access. So in my clinical internship shell, you'll find the same things that you find in your course instructor shell. Of course, they're a little bit different. This is where you will upload your tasks for me to review. I'll give you feedback on those. And then once we have your task in good shape, I feel like it's ready to be graded. That means that it'll receive a score of 100. Then I will tell you to put it in the evaluation Dropbox. So if you've had me before, then you're used to that routine. If you never had me before as your clinical coach, then that may be a little new to you. However, most clinical coaches in the Gardner Webb MELS program follow the same routine, so shouldn't be a lot of difference in what one clinical coach does over the other. However, just like one teacher teaches a little bit different, in one classroom in one school than another does in another classroom in another school. Of course, there's going to be some differences between the clinical coaches as well. But as I said, I prefer that you submit when you're ready for your task to be, when you've gone through the peer review process and your course instructor, and I'm anticipating that your course instructor will be Dr. Stone, at least that's what's noted in the information that I received so far. So Dr. Stone at some point in time will tell you to send your task, whether it be the CAAP or the Psyop, will send your task to me for feedback. And then I will give you, when you do that, just upload it there under task for review. And I will give you feedback on that particular task. And then maybe in great shape, telling you to go ahead and submit to the evaluation Dropbox, or I may give you some feedback and ask you to do a couple of revisions to make sure that we're in good shape for you to move forward. And in that case, you'll do those revisions, and then at the end of completing those revisions, then you'll send it back to me for another review. And when I feel like it's ready to be graded at some point in time, I will tell you to upload to the evaluation Dropbox. So that's the process. If you have any questions on that, I will be joining Dr. Stone's class normally for 605 students in the summer. I joined Dr. Stone's class a couple of 3 times, maybe 4 times. So if you have any questions, you can ask them then, or certainly reach out to me on email. You will have my email address because I'll be emailing the link to this recording to you, and ask me any questions if you have. Now, getting back to the CAAP and the Psyop, as I said, I rely heavy on the scale handbook as a resource, but as you will know through going through the program, there are a couple of templates. Now, in my Blackboard internship shell, you will find these templates and resources under templates and resources. So if you'll click on that, you will see down here towards the bottom, CAAP final evidence template and the Psyop final evidence template. So I'm just going to show those to you real quick. The CAAP final evidence template, if you haven't already seen it and been made aware of it, it's there in my Blackboard shell. I'm sure Dr. Stone, your course instructor, will have it in their shell as well, in their course shell. This gives some directions and guidance on how to complete the CAAP. Basically, you could take this and run with it and do very well. This kind of gets into the specifics, but what I'm going to do for this video is just kind of give you an overview to get you started with the CAAP, and if you haven't already, and that way between the template, what you have heard possibly from your 603 add-on instructor, and this video, you'll be in good shape to start the summer semester. So this is the CAAP template. Under templates and resources in my Blackboard shell, you will also see the Psyop template. And that basically gives you some information. I'm going to go over your overview with the Psyop as well as the CAAP. But as I will go into more detail go into more detail later, the Psyop is a culminating narrative. It will take information from all that you have done up to this point and utilize that for a complete school improvement action plan. That is where the acronym Psyop comes from. And we'll go into more detail later on that. So getting back to the scale handbook, let's look at the CAAP. The CAAP is basically you just pulling in information from what's available to you at your school. It's really going and doing research as far as the cultural aspect of your school. It relies heavy on qualitative data. Of course, it does incorporate some quantitative data as well, but it's going to cause you to really go in and do a qualitative analysis of your school. What's the culture like at your school? Now, we're also talking about internally and externally. So what's the culture of your school? And also, how does your school fit into the culture of the community in which the school resides. So the first thing you do in the CAAP, and that is the Cultural Advocacy and Action Plan, is to basically the first thing you're going to do is utilize the Teaching Working Condition Survey. So you're going to go in and do an analysis and pull out some specific information. We'll kind of get to that in just a little bit from the Teacher Working Condition Survey and do an analysis on that. Once you do that, that's going to be, and also please know that you can utilize the Teacher Working Condition Survey or any other validated cultural assessment. Now, if you are in another state, which I know some candidates are, you may not have a teacher, you certainly won't have the North Carolina Teacher Working Condition Survey, but there probably is an equivalent to that in the state that you are working in. I believe South Carolina has the same thing in their state, but it's basically a cultural assessment, a validated cultural assessment. So I know sometimes we have candidates who are in a charter school or a private school and may not have access to this, may not have that, certainly may not do that type of assessment, but there may be another type of assessment that's done at a charter or private school that you can utilize. So if you have any questions on that, just reach out to me, reach out to Dr. Stone, your course instructor, and we'll help you pull in what you need to there. So once again, you just kind of do an assessment on that Teacher Working Condition Survey or some other validated cultural assessment, and that's your baseline data. That's where you start. What does that survey, what does that assessment say about the culture of your school within some specific areas? And that's the baseline for your CAAP. And also, please be sure to look at it as you go through this. You're looking through internally and externally as well. So in addition to that, at some point in time, once you go through the analysis of the Teacher Working Condition Survey or cultural assessment, then you're going to start relying heavy on qualitative data. You're going to go in and you're going to do an observation of the school internally and externally. Different ways. You're going to look at the vision. You're going to look at the mission. You're going to look at the school leadership. You're going to look at teacher experience. You're going to look at a lot of in North Carolina, we have an NC school report card. A lot of information is going to be contained there. A lot of it's contained on the website of the school. You know, what's the mission like? What's the vision? What's the values that's represented by the school? How does the culture function? And that's a lot of observation. That's a lot of qualitative data gathering. And basically, what you're going to do is what you see as an observer, utilizing all this qualitative data, is that reflected in the quantitative data pulled in from that Teacher Working Condition Survey? So the survey, your analysis of that, your research of that, that's the baseline. That's the baseline. So then are you seeing, hearing, observing what is reflected in that baseline data? And that's kind of the CAAP in a nutshell. Task one, you basically, as I said earlier, you're going to go in the Teacher Working Condition Survey and you're going to do an analysis in these specific areas: empowerment, leadership, facilities, resources, and time. What's that survey or an equivalent survey say about those areas at your school? Do the teachers feel empowered? Is there shared leadership? Is the leadership connected to the teachers? Is the leadership working collaboratively with the personnel to make decisions for the school? Are the facilities, the classroom set up? Are the facilities good for instruction? Are teachers given resources? Are they given time for professional development, to collaborate, to engage in professional learning communities, so on and so forth? You're going to pull all that data out of the Teacher Working Condition Survey or some other data or some other instrument in those areas. That's task one, is just analysis of that. And task two, then you're going to go in and do some of those observations that we talked about. You're going to describe the school setting, and you could actually pull some of this from some of the other evidences you've done, because you've done a school setting before for the evidences that you worked on up to this point, be a little more detailed in this, but what's the school set, what's the setting of the school, but then how is the school, what's the community setting of the school? So excuse me, of the community, the setting of the community where the school is located. So if you haven't done that before, that's information that you're going to need to pull in. School setting, community setting, what's the environment of the school? How does the student achievement look? You can pull that from some of the past data that you've collected and for some of the other evidences. What is the student diversity like? Staff cultural diversity. You need to talk about exceptionalities, whether it be exceptional children, English language learners, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, so on and so forth. So you're really pulling in, and this can come from the NC, North Carolina School Report Card. I think South Carolina has an equivalent of that as well. But pulling in all of that data, all of that information that you can find out about that school. How does the school look? How does the school perform? What does the community look like? How does the community engage the school and the school engage the community? What are the subgroups of the school? And what does the diversity look like of the school? And so that's all about task 2, the school environment analysis. Now in task 3 is the cultural competence analysis. And basically that is looking at what is the school's vision, what is the school's mission, what is the school's leadership, what's the teacher quality, as far as the experience and certification, how many national board certified teachers are on staff, what's the average experience of the teacher, how many young teachers are on staff, how many beginning teachers are on staff, what is the support for beginning teachers, the mentorship of beginning teachers, what does that look like? How are the parents engaged? What's the parental engagement plan of the school? If it's a Title I school, it has to have a parental engagement plan, regardless of state, I would say, but definitely in North Carolina. How does the parents and the parent organizations in the community support the schools? Any community organization adopted the school? How are they? How is conflict resolution provided in the school? And that's not necessarily student discipline. That's any conflict, and not necessarily a negative. If you've had me before, you've heard me talk about conflict resolution. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative. It's just a difference of opinion. It's just people collaborate and come together to determine the course of action of the school. And there are different opinions on how that direction needs to go. That's resolving conflict. And once again, looking at student achievement. That's task 3. And then task 4, you create a visual or graphic organizational chart, and a PERT chart is recommended or mentioned here. I think it's also mentioned in the template that's provided to you, that Microsoft Word document that we looked at. But how can all that you discovered be presented in a graphic organizational chart? And that is task 4. There's no reflections of any competencies in task 4 for the CAAP. So you just need to create a visual of what you have found out in tasks 1, 2, 3, and that's the CAAP. Looking down at the rubric for each of these, and we'll go past the skip here. Of course, here are the prompts for each of the CAAP, for each of the tasks within the CAAP. Once again, those are the areas that you need to focus in on in the teacher working conditions survey. And through that, you will develop a needs assessment based on those results. That gives you information on what that looks like. You will be pulling another team together to help you analyze this data and participate in that needs assessment. But based on what you saw in the teacher working conditions survey, what are the needs of the school? And then you're going, as I said earlier, you're going to kind of validate that through some other observations, qualitative observations, by looking at the school setting, how it functions within the community, achievement, on down to vision, its vision, mission, leadership, so on and so forth. Task 2 prompt, basically what I've already told you. You're going to look at the different aspects of the school, within the school, and part of this is looking at, you can create some surveys your own, some of your own observations, looking into the data that I talked about earlier. You can even interview some of the people. That's always very strong. If people's perception, if you interview the people, the participants within the setting, and asking questions within those interviews, or even small group, focus group conversations, is what they're saying representing their perception lining up with what you're seeing on the teacher working condition survey, and is that reflected in other aspects of the school? So is the walk matching the talk, so to speak? But it's always powerful to look at people's perceptions and how they see their setting in, and then compare that to what you see as an observer, and looking at the other different aspects of the school. So that's always powerful. And task 3 gives you the directions on looking at what we already talked about: vision, mission, leadership, so on and so forth. And then of course, task 4 is creating a chart that represents all of that, some type of visual, a PERT chart, some type of graphic organizer that takes into account all of it that you have seen through the other and data you collected through the other tasks. So I always look at the rubric when giving feedback, and this is what I will be looking at as I'll make sure that each of those identified areas are represented, and then there's recommendations based on what you and your team reviewed in these areas, addressing these information as well. Task 2, this is what I'll look like when when I review your task 2, and of course task 3 and task 4. And that's the CAAP. That's the CAAP in a nutshell. And like I said, you may have already been given information on how to do the CAAP. You may already, by the time you see this video, may already be well within the CAAP. So hopefully this reinforces what you already knew, and also provides some additional resources if needed. So moving from the CAAP on into the School Improvement Action Plan, as I said, the Psyop is basically just a culmination of everything that you have collected so far. The APSL, the APTL, the OMA, the SIAP, the CAAP that we just talked about, is taking all the information that you have gotten from those other evidences and utilizing them in a complete school improvement action plan. So you go back and you pull a lot of the information that you've already collected for each of the from each of the different evidences that you've worked on in the past, and that's the Psyop. But you're looking at it as an overall school improvement plan. So that's what an administrator does, really, from year to year. From sometimes it's every 3 years, sometimes it's every 5 years. But data that you collected through the course of that timeline, whenever you're going to do your school improvement or your strategic plan, so on and so forth, you pull in data throughout that cycle, and then as you roll over into a new cycle, you utilize all that data that you've collected during that timeline, and you create this is what we need to do now based on how we perform and what we see in the past, and that's what you're doing with the Psyop. Now, please know that if you look at that template action plan, or excuse me, that template for the Psyop, it's going to tell you, to pull in information from this evidence, from that evidence. You can get information from the APSL and we use it here. You can get information from the OMA and use it here. That's fine, do that, but you need to remove all references to the OMA, to the CAAP, to the APSL, to the APTL, and that's a common mistake that I see in candidates is they just copy and paste. They just copy and paste from past evidences based on that template resource sheet. They just copy and paste from past evidences and put it into the Psyop. And that's not really the intention of that. It's intended that you use that data for the Psyop, but it's within the context of the Psyop. For example, I've seen a lot of candidates, they'll go into APSL and just copy and paste all of the APSL into the Psyop, including research and PLCs. All the narrative that they wrote for PLC research, they put it in the Psyop, and it doesn't have anything to do with Psyop. It's not relevant to the Psyop, and it's not required by the Psyop. So you don't. Why would you copy and paste it into there? It's just unnecessary text that really doesn't have any relevancy to what you're doing within the Psyop. So it no longer becomes the action plan for the APSL or the action plan for the APTL. It now becomes the action plan for the Psyop. So it needs to be talked about. If you had a PLC team for the APSL, they're no longer the APSL PLC team. They're now the Psyop PLC team. So any information you pull from past evidences into the Psyop, it needs to be reset, if you will, for the Psyop. So don't make that mistake of just copy and paste, and take that information and write your narrative, but make sure that you're writing it to the Psyop and it's just not a copy and paste. So task 1, school data project, you're really pulling information from, this can come real heavy from the APSL, and all that data that you pulled in from the APSL, test results, discipline, attendance, standardized test results, benchmark test results, anything regarding student achievement that you think is relevant to looking at, you pull all that information in. Of course, the prompt and the rubric does call for EBOS as well if you have access to that, or some other data analysis tool that measures academic progress. You pull that information in as well. Task 2, you pull in information in from the teacher working condition survey or something equivalent to that. So you're going back and you're utilizing that teacher working condition survey again. Maybe from the time you did it in the past until now, you now have new teacher working condition survey results, which probably wouldn't be as different for you as because you'll be working on it in the CAAP and the Psyop, basically at the same time. So all the stuff that you just did for the CAAP, you can utilize here in the Psyop. A lot of times, traditional candidates who go 601, 602, 603, 604, 605, they kind of, depending on the cycle of the TWCS, can get different data results. For you, it will be the same. So, but you go back and you pull in all that information from the teacher working condition survey and utilize that in reference to the school improvement action plan. Task 3 is you're going to get a focus group together, internal and external, and this is huge. You need to have representation of internal, teachers, faculty members, external parents, community members, members from faith-based organization. There needs to be people within the school and people within the community coming together to look at all the information that you've collected in 1 and 2 and develop some recommendations, identifying some needs. So that is you leading the focus group. Excuse me, my alarm just went off. Let me stop that. It's you utilizing the focus group to leading that group, facilitating that conversation, to look at all the information that you got from the school data project and the teacher working condition survey, and getting feedback on the findings. What's going well, where do we need to look at for improvement, and then pulling all that information together in task 3. All right, as you look at the recommendations for task 3 and seeing, okay, we need to move in this direction based on the focus group conversation, based on what we looked at in task 1 and task 2, we need to go here. We're going to create an action plan to go in this direction, and what resources are available to help you with that action plan. So you want to lead a team to specifically look at the different resources needed to support your school improvement action plan. And that is based on the data that you looked at, the data image, the data disaggregation, teacher working condition survey, the focus group conversation is what resources, as you pull this action plan together, what resources are you going to need, that's going to be needed to accomplish this action plan. Task 5 is just another visual representation of all the aspects of the Psyop and how they're connected. That can be, you will certainly have your action plan there. In addition, you can do another PERT chart, do another graphic organizer to show all of the aspects of the Psyop, how they're connected and how they flow towards the improvement of the school, and not just academic improvement, but improvement in the culture of the school, improvement of the academic achievement of the school. Is how do we improve the school from all aspects. That's why I said this is kind of a culminating activity of looking at a total school improvement action plan. And then in task 6, you will reflect on all 21 competencies for the final competency reflection. And then you will be done with all the evidences and will be ready to move on. So that is an overview of the CAAP and the Psyop. As I said, I kind of approached it from the resource of the school, or excuse me, the scale handbook. So I would advise you to utilize what you know up to this point, maybe what your 603 add-on course instructor has told you. Utilize that information, this video, and also the templates that have been shared with you or will be shared with you or you pulled off of my Blackboard shell. Utilize that to accomplish the CAAP and the Psyop for your final semester. I would recommend as soon as you finish up with spring of 2022 that you automatically start moving and working on the CAAP and the Psyop for summer 2022. I will send this video out to everyone that's on my roster at this point in time. I am actually recording this on April the 21st, but I will wait a few more days or a week, a little bit towards the end of the semester to kind of allow my roster to be finalized. So I'll be sure to catch every candidate that I will be working with in summers 2022. However, if you get this video and you know of a colleague or peer in your group with Dr. Stone that did not get this, please forward this link to them. Or if you know of anybody that I missed, please reach out to me and let me know. As I said, you will have my email address because it will be, the link to this video will be coming from that address. I wish you all luck. I hope things go smoothly for you this semester, and reach out to me if you need an individual Zoom session, a small group Zoom session. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we can set that up to kind of clarify anything that you've been given or told in regards to your final semester in the MELS program for Gardner-Webb. I'll be happy to help you any way that I can. I look forward to working with you and meeting you and Dr. Stone's course Zooms, and we will get you in good shape to graduate so you can move on from Gardner-Webb and move forward with your career. God bless you all. I hope and pray you and your family stay safe and healthy, and look forward to working with you. Thank you.